Hello, everyone. I am Brandon, and I want to welcome you all here to Tansson Talks TV. I'm excited to have you all here today.
Hi. Good morning, Brandon.
Hello, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here once again, Mom. This has been always fun.
Oh, yeah, I enjoy doing this also.
Yeah, so are you able to let everyone know what show we are discussing today on Tansson Talks TV?
Yes, today we're going to be discussing Alice.
Yeah, I'm very excited to get into this one. We're continuing on in the 1970s from our last time doing the Mary Tyler Moore show, and so I'm excited to get a little bit further into the 70s.
Oh, yep, sounds great.
Yeah, so you're able to go ahead and actually, before we give our synopsis, I will say that both of us we have seen, the entirety of Alice for the most part, and we didn't. I don't think either of us really remembered this first episode. At least for me. What about you?
No, I really didn't remember this first episode at all. And I guess we need to clarify also this is the original first episode.
Yes, this is the pilot episode from was it 1975?
Actually, 1976.
Yeah, so I'm definitely, like I said, excited to get into this. And so, are you able to provide us with the synopsis for this episode?
I sure will. Um, First of all, this this particular TV show is based off a movie. Alice doesn't live here anymore. I have seen the movie, however, I will say it was many, many, many years ago, so I do not recall the details of the movie. But in this particular show, Alice is a widow who's recently moved to Arizona. She's an aspiring singer, and she has a 12-year-old son that she's raising by herself, and his name is Tommy. Currently, Alice is working as a waitress at Mel's Diner with two other waitresses named Vera and Flo. In the first episode, Alice dates a man who she believes is in the music industry. As I said, Alice is an aspiring singer, so she's doing everything she can to kind of get into that business. And so originally, when she first met this man, I don't think she really liked him that much, but he kind of indicated by one line that he was in the industry, or at least that's what she thought he was in. And so, with the help of Flo, another waitress in Mel's Diner, she's able to pull off a time where she's able to sing to this gentleman and try to prove that she needs to be in the industry herself. Um, she does sing for him. The whole diner hears that they're able to get a piano and sing to everyone in the diner. The gentleman acts like he's interested, but he really is not in the industry itself. And so we find out later in the episode that Joel is he is really a hosiery salesman from Portland. And so even though Alice did all of this, it really didn't matter. She really does not like Joel. We find out later, I believe, is 25-ish years old, and Alice is older than that. So she was dating a younger person, and she did indicate earlier that she was kind of doing that anyway with him. Um, and so that's for the most the essence of the first episode of this particular show.
Cool. Well, as always, thank you so much for the synopsis.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so I would say, first of all, to add on to like you were saying, the show is indeed based off of the movie Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. And so that movie had just come out a few years prior, and so there are some consistencies that the show tried to, to keep with the movie, even though, you know, it has a major difference, including a different cast, but they did keep the actor that plays Mel, which is the boss of Alice at the diner. And for this episode, they kept Alice's son Tommy on, even though he was recast right after this episode.
Hmm. He sure was. Now, as you kind of mentioned, also we have watched Alice all the way through. Not recently, but we have watched Alice all the way through. And the character of Tommy, even though it's a different person, I think when they brought in the other gentleman to play Tommy, that it just still flowed the same. That at least based upon the way the initial person acted, and I can't recall what his real name is, the young man who was in the original episode, but it seemed like I thought it was interesting they kept the character virtually the same.
Yes, and in this episode, Tommy is played by Alfred Lutter, and in the rest of the series, played by Philip McKeon.
Yes.
And I completely agree with what you're saying in regards to the characterization of Tommy. I mean, definitely feels like the same Tommy that we know for the rest of the series. I mean, just some minor things here and there, but nevertheless, I mean, for consistency purposes, I can definitely see. I mean, I guess what keeps Tommy the same, and also what's different, but same sort of thing with all pilot episodes for the most part. You have those noticeable changes from the first episode to the rest of the series.
Yep. And do you want to talk about any of the changes that you saw?
I'll go ahead and mention one of them, and then I'll hand it over to you. And that would be that I think one of the biggest changes is actually the major emphasis on Alice's music career. I know that from what I read about in the movie, I've not seen the movie, and you have, I believe, you just said.
I have, but it was many, many years ago.
Yeah, I've never seen the movie, but from what I read about it did play a major emphasis on both Alice's, waitressing work and her music career. And I could sort of see where, this episode had a major emphasis on her really trying to leave the diner and find any way to get a professional music career, which is something that the show didn't really keep up with, but I think for the better, in my opinion. Um, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you also. I know there were several episodes that did involve Alice singing, um, but I think it was toward the end where they emphasized it a little bit more than they did at the beginning of the series. But yes, that I kind of like that they kind of didn't concentrate on that as much, and that it was really about her connection with her friends on the show.
Yeah, and that's something I would say too, is that even though we do in this episode see a bit of the other two waitresses, Flo and Vera, I would say that they are mostly background characters in this. Well, I'll take that back. I would say that Flo is a character that sort of, I guess, acts as a sort of like surrogate older sister you know, to Alice in this regard for this episode, as you can see that she's sort of looking out for her, but at the same time lets her do her own thing. Meanwhile, Vera just seems more so like in the background for this episode as like a comic relief.
Yeah, no, I agree totally. I actually had that written down in my notes also. I think in this episode for Flo, you could see her personality kind of coming out just a little bit. Although she is background, you could see that she does have a little bit of a flamboyant personality. And in the first episode, also, Veer is not explored at all. So it'd be interesting to see what episode they finally explore Vera.
Yeah, that is quite true. And for Flo in this regard, we do get to see the first time that she uses her signature catchphrase, "Kiss my grits."
Yes, hmm, we sure do.
And what would you say about Mel in this episode? I don't fully remember how much he was really characterized in this episode, but what were your thoughts since you have your nice detailed notes?
Well, in this episode, I don't think he was much of a character. He was just kind of there as the boss person, and that's about it in this episode. I think in this episode, it seems like they were just truly concentrating on Alice, establishing who she is and what she wants to do. But in the sense of Mel, even though we know he's fully developed much later, it would also be interesting to see which episode actually talks about his past and kind of gives some depth to his personality.
Yeah, that is quite true. And since, like I said before, and I'll continue saying, you are a resident theme song person, what do you have to say about this pilot episode's theme song?
I gave it an 8.5. Um, I will say this about the theme song for Alice. I like that throughout the years that they did change the theme song. It's very slight, but they did change it. They changed it, the beat and the tempo, so it became modernized as the time was going through. I can't remember, Brand. Do you remember how many years Alice stayed on the air?
So let's see. So Alice started in 1976 and it ended in 1985. So 9 seasons, 202 episodes.
Okay. Yeah, and so you could tell throughout the years as the theme song progressed, and they made some changes and made it upbeat and everything like that. I gave it an 8.5 because although I do remember most of the words, there are times when it kind of goes in and out, and I don't quite know exactly the words. You get a 10 if I've memorized all of the lyrics and I can sing it without it. And so it's just there are times when I'm able to sing it, at times I'm not able to sing it.
That makes sense. And something I would say too is that this first episode has a very well, it has a very different theme song than the rest of this first season in regards to how it's characterized. And so, how would you? I don't know. How would what were your thoughts about that? Comparing this first episode pilot theme song to the rest of season one in regards to what's shown.
I would actually have to go back and re-listen to it again. Like I said, there's a little bit of slight variation, but the same song per se is there, if that makes sense. It's just a very slight variation with it.
Yeah, because I know for most of the for this episode here, like the entire theme song is Alice and her son Tommy. Going around, I guess the Phoenix, Arizona area where the fictional setting is, and I guess just going around. I'm not completely sure where they are. Like they're like maybe like in a shopping area, and then like on horses at some point. I guess just carousing around the area.
Yeah, and just a little trivia knowledge for you, Brandon, and this is concerning me. And I know you do know. I did live in Arizona for 8.5 years, and but I was a young child during that time period. And of course, Alice was on during that time, so I really wish I had been aware enough to have actually been able to see Mel's Diner, or at least the area for where it was visualized per se. We do know that your aunt did have a chance to go, and she got a chance to actually visit the real Mel Diner, and that was done very recently. But I wish, as a young child, I had been able to go and actually see where the visualization was.
Yeah, that would have been cool, especially like you said that it was on the air back then too.
It was the air at that time.
And out of curiosity, for you watching it back then, did that ever occur to you that it was set in like in an area adjacent to where you were?
No, actually, it never even hit me. And I can say for my parents too, I don't think it ever hit us that Alice actually took place there, even though we were in Glendale, which is very close to Phoenix, Arizona. It never hit us that we should have gone to see Mel Steiner.
Well, that's unfortunate, but hopefully you will get a chance to view that because I would love to see that as well.
I'm sure you would.
But yeah, but are there any other thoughts that you have in regards to this episode starting off Alice?
I don't really have any other really thoughts about it. Like I said, I thought it was a good episode. It's very watchable. I could probably watch it again. It was also interesting to see Mel's Diner itself. I'm talking about the physical Mel's Diner because when the True series came on, it changed. It's very slight, but the set itself changed for the True series. And so I think I would like, as I said before, to see the couple episodes that develop Vera. And even though we learn about Flo's character, we see that she's flamboyant, but we don't know her background either. And the same with Mel. So I guess it'd be fun to watch those other 3 episodes or 4. How many? I don't know how many episodes it took to kind of establish them as characters.
Yeah, that is so true. And I did look up, the TV show Alice in comparison to the film. So the film
Hmm.
came out in, I believe, December of 1974,
Hmm.
whereas the TV show, well, this episode came on at the end of August of 1976, but the rest of the
Hmm.
series didn't come on for another month after this episode.
Okay. And I'd also like to clarify for your audience that when I did watch Alice, for the most part, if you're speaking about the 70s, I would have watched it in reruns. So, because I would have been a little person there. So I wouldn't have remembered it like that. But in the 80s, when I did remember the series, I do remember watching it while it was on the air.
Well, that is, really good insight to add into this. Yeah, yeah, into our what is this discussion?
Discussion, yeah.
But nevertheless, this is always so fun to do this, and like I said, I really can't wait to see what we end up doing next week.
All right, same here.
Yeah, and of course, as always, you all can feel free to tune into these episodes as well, so that way you all can get engaged in discussion and let us know what you think of this episode or anything else that you'd like us to watch.
Oh yeah, and feel free to list some shows down in the comments. We might just pick one of those shows.
That we will do. But until next time, have a wonderful day, everyone.
All right, bye bye.
See y'all later.